I have divided this video into 4 chapters plus an introduction. Chapter 1, staining with water-based wood dyes. Chapter 2, sanding to add texture. Chapter 3, adding white paint. And Chapter 4, sealing the wood with Danish oil. Everything you need for painting is outlined in video 1. And you can download a kit list from my website. Visit www.sarahvigosart.com/tutorials. If you have any allergies or sensitive skin, please use any paints, glues or oils at your own discretion. Check the information available for the brand you are using. And remember, you can paint the puppet however you like. Here are all my puppet pieces, ready for staining in Chapter 1. And here's one quick extra step before I start. Using a hand countersink, I countersunk the 2 upper armholes. So that the screws will sit flush in the holes after assembly. You can find the screws in your carving kits. Chapter 1. Staining with water-based wood dyes. Adding the base colours. I am using Bulgur's walnut crystals and water-based wood dyes. These are intermixable, so I tested out some shades first. Here are my different options for shades of brown. Just walnut crystals and water, walnut crystal solution and orange wood dye, the same again but with less walnut and more orange, the same again but with more water. These are the 2 shades I'll be using. Tip: dry any test swatches with a hairdryer. They'll look a lot lighter when dry. Step 1. Adding the first shade. I stained all of my pieces with the orange-brown mix. Step 2. Adding other shades. I added the darker walnut brown to the hare's back. To the grooves in the nose and mouth. And to the eye sockets. I also added it to the base of the feet to the creases in the pores, and to the front pores. I then decided to darken the eyes and mouth a bit more. So I added some black wood dye, neat from the bottle. Finally, I worked some walnut brown into the creases on the face. I wanted to add a bit more definition. You can also work more shades in later in the process, so long as you do it before adding the wood oil in Chapter 4. Here are all the pieces once the wood dye has dried. It will take at least a few hours for the wood dye to dry. Ideally, leave the pieces overnight to dry. In Chapter 2, we'll bring out the textures with sanding. Chapter 2. Sanding to add texture. Enhancing the carved textures and adding highlights. For this stage, use wet and dry sandpaper, 600 to 1200 grit. Try a bit of light sanding on the belly first. You can see how it brings out the texture of the carving and creates highlights. I sanded the belly and chest of the hare, the nose and mouth area, the brow lines, the tips of the feet, the tips of the paws, and the top of the arms. Chapter 3. Adding white paint. Dry brushing the highlights. For my hair, I am using white milk paint. Milk paint is a powder paint mixed with water. Here, it is the consistency of double cream. Milk paint is more porous than other paints. This means the wood oil can soak through a little bit in Chapter 4. Alternative options are acrylic paint or chalk paint. As with sanding, I suggest starting with the hare's belly. With a minimal amount of paint on your brush, drag it lightly over the surface of the piece. This brings out the highlights on the surface. This technique is called dry brushing. You can build up the paint gradually until you achieve the effect you want. Here's what I did. It took a bit of experimentation. I lightly brushed some white across the sides of the body, creating a speckly effect. I layered up the belly to create a bright white. I added white to the brows, nose and mouth. Starting thick but blending out with dry brushing. I added a ring of solid white around each eye socket. Next, after the white paint had dried, I added a few more shades of wood dye, as shown. Walnut brown and black on the top of the head, more orange-brown on the sides of the face, and more walnut brown on the cheeks. You can also add an eye to the puppet to see how it looks. I also dry brushed some more white onto the hare's back. Finally, I added white paint to the tips of the paws and feet. FYI, white paint dries much quicker than the wood dyes, about an hour. Chapter 4. Sealing the wood with Danish oil. Adding a water-resistant seal and a vibrant lustre. Adding wood oil will prevent the wood dyes from running and give the colours a nice sheen without looking too shiny. I use Danish oil as it dries lighter than other wood oils. There are various brands you can try. Remember, do some research if you have any allergies. Give each piece a thorough coating with the oil. However, try not to add too much oil to any of the white areas. Too much oil will saturate the white paint and dry shiny. I just add one layer of Danish oil for now. However, over time, the wood can dry out, so you might want to feed the wood with more oil sometime in the future. After a few minutes, soak up any excess oil with a cloth, especially on the areas of white paint. Leave overnight to dry. Once dry, your puppet is ready for assembly in video 10.